Calling all surfers. We're going to be doing a DreamBot run. Going to be doing a live astrology reading. Who's in? We're going to have some interesting topics today because the DreamBot is spelling out a lot of spiritual stuff. And it has me thinking about the kite in the astrology, and it has me thinking about consensus timelines, inflection points, the real meaning of awakening, in my opinion. Of course, it's only my opinion. And then I'm looking at the next kite to be flowing through once we get through with so we had the Mercury kite. Hold on. Let me back up. There's your title for today. Consensus pivot point. Inflection point happening now, and that is based on what we're going to talk about in the DreamBot, and then I'm going to correlate it to the astrology. So what I was trying to get to was related to the astrology. Recall this kite that's happening. It's currently a grand air trine, and it's a pretty tight grand air trine. The time of this recording is on September 24th, 2025 at 12:02 p.m. Central Time. Daylight savings time. When is that going to go away? Anyway, grand air trine, sun. Pretty much at the midheaven. Now, just to give you a little overview of the chart, this is the current chart. It's live. And being at the, noon, you'd think that the sun would be like straight up. But in the housing world, the houses are of different lengths. That's why it sort of pushes the midheaven. This arrow here is the midheaven. This is looking straight up in the sky. Sun's not quite there yet, but it doesn't have that far to go as it appears. So sun is important here, not just because it's the strongest energy in the sky on most days, in my opinion, but it's also on a grand air trine, and a tight one at that. Pluto, Uranus in Gemini, Sun in Libra. The Libra has us focusing on what's fair and what's balance and justice, aesthetics, finances. But what I was going to say earlier was that this grand air trine kite, so the kite's long term, this little mini grand trine down here, the little bottom part of the kite. So we did have a quick one with with Mercury transiting. Now it's the sun, so the kite is changing and transforming the timeline for self in Libra. The life vectors, the individual inner force is the sun. And it's all in that ideal changing. Saturn is timeline in Pisces. Neptune is dreaming of the ideal self. And for good or bad, it's doing it. And whether or not you feel it or not, it's a further out planet. So it's there. Whether or not you are realizing it, that's another story. But with an opposition over to the sun on a grand air trine is very mental, and it's a mental change. Pluto is transformative in Aquarius, so there's a lot of disclosure and upheaval in power and control, transforming towards an Aquarian lens. And then Uranus is changing people's minds and different mindsets and in sparks of insight. And that's what the soul, the inner force for all of us at an individual level is facing. So it's either change or you're screwed. Adapt or you're screwed. At least consider that. And that's not a scare tactic. That's you get even if we just talk technology in the real world, technology is not just speeding up, it's accelerating. Well, that's the same thing. it's not just moving fast, it's accelerating. And so the faster we need to be prepared. And I don't know, like the old companies, like maybe like the old camera film companies, they had a niche in the market and worth billions of dollars. And then overnight, they kind of ridiculed tech. I think the story goes, was it Kodak or one of those companies? They developed one of these digital camera technologies, and then they hid it from the world, thinking that they wanted to keep this niche, and they were wrong, and so they had to go bankrupt. I don't know if that was Kodak or one of the others, but anyway, keep adapting, and it's in the mental world. All right, so consensus point. What is that all about? Let's get into the DreamBot. All right, get rid of that, and off we go. Let's go to the bottom. The highest theme here is 9, and 9 different words that indicate positive future, progressive info, expansive learning. And that's important because on our bottom theme is the way it's always been. It's that stagnancy. It's nothing's ever going to change. And in the middle, the yellow represents 7 different words: positive interpersonal energy. I want to start there. Interpersonal. So share, person, date as in dating, because we have love, related, and expand. These are positive words that represent interpersonal positivity. All right, let's look at the green, or what I perceive to be the green. Let me take this night light off. Does that improve things? Is that different? All right. Now for the green. Same. Top word. Number 1 word in the DreamBot, the word same. And September stays high. Incidentally, while we're on that topic, 2025 is still here. And that's unusual for a DreamBot. 2025, we've had 9 months of weekly DreamBots. That should be baselined out. But it's increasing, so there you go. That's odd. All right, so same, been, things the way they've been, had, last. The things that last stay the same. In other words, has, and probably 2025 should be in there too, for the same reason I just said. But anyway, that's stagnancy and the way things have always been. And that flies in the face of the first one, positive future. Because look at all the red arrows: vision, think, promoted, learn, precognition, very future-oriented word. Open is a mindset. And I guess the astrology, the kite that we just talked about, would do that as well. Dreams and information and expand is also not just for the interpersonal, but for the positive future, expansive learning. There are a couple of linguistics, and there's a couple of polarities in here. Both of those items, the polarities and the linguistics, are together. In other words, the polarities are in the linguistics. So, number 1, learn, spiritual, night, day. The polarities is night, day. But I think it speaks, sometimes the linguistics speak to us. Learn, the spiritual, both night and day. It's time for that, folks. And we'll have a little bit of kind of philosophy on that a little bit later. Linguistics set number 2. Open, hidden. Open and hidden is a polarity. Open, hidden, dreams, information, has 2025 expand. I'm kind of, me personally, I'm reading into that things that were hidden will be open and information will be out, and 2025 will feel like it's expanding. And that's and that matches the kite. So with the kite, let's go back here. Just review. We had a grand air trine with Mercury at the head a few weeks back. Then we have Sun currently in a grand air trine. Very powerful, very tight. 1 degree, 55 minutes. Pluto, 1 degree, 27 minutes. Uranus, 1 degree, 19 minutes. So pretty tight right now on September 24th. And then we have to look forward to Venus will eventually do and take the helm at this kite while the mini grand trine is still happening. Neptune, we can look at that. Whether or not Neptune will be in Aries or Pisces by then, I'm guessing it'll still be in Aries, but let's check. Be a good question for us. Just to give you an overview, I'm looking at the top view, or the kind of the landscape view of October. And what I'm looking for first is Neptune. And Neptune, you can see, will transition back into Pisces in a retrograde on or around the time of the new moon. So that will be after. So what we're looking at here is, when does Venus take the helm of the grand air trine? Well, starts here. This is Venus, starts right here. Can you see that? And you see all these 14s. That's big. That's going to be a big surf day. So just a little heads up. On the 14th of October, a lot of things happening, and a lot of things with Venus, because that's when Venus takes the exact helm of the grand air trine / kite thing. So just interesting there. So I think I was right. When Venus switches into Libra, the day after does the head of the kite. And so everything we just talked about with the kite, so everything's transforming mentally, but it's a mental perspective of all things Venus: harmony, peace, beauty, finance, personal finance, balance, justice, aesthetics, the way you look, love, relationship, all that stuff. That's going to be a big overhaul. All right, so overhaul, and that's why I think these kites are really important and have been important, is because I think we're into this consensus timeline topic. And that's what I think the DreamBot was talking about. Right here. Timelines. This is the way it always has been. So we have some polarities, the way things have always been, and then this positive future. So, as most of you know, you might have different words for it, but there's a consensus timeline sort of being programmed down our throats. And if the collective continues to just consume what they are given, then we are on what's called a consensus timeline. You're just dragged along with assumptions about reality, facts about what has happened, and you basically lose your power. But when we have an inflection point, right there, what I'm calling the inflection point, in my opinion, based on this DreamBot, it's happening now. It's happening now because of that kite right now, grand air trine kite. And what that means is we have at least a small but a growing number of people in the collective who are starting to be brave enough to have their own thread and intention. Let's see, the collective timeline versus a personal timeline. You can opt out of the collective timeline, the consensus timeline. In order to do that, you would stop asking what's real and start asking, what am I making real by holding it and holding it tight? This is what has been on social media called the awakening. It's not a great awakening, like all of a sudden we have all the facts now we have the truth. It's taking yourself from the consensus timeline and having your own timeline and being brave enough to do that. In order to do that, you stop consuming what is given to you, just raw. You don't also poo-poo it either. You just realize it's there. And then you shift your mind towards the convergent point for yourself, which is having a vision, so you need a vision for yourself. You need to have a vision for what your future looks like. You need to have clarity, but you also need to have confidence in it. Now, what I'm noticing is in the world of psychology is that even negative people, so like with severe psychosis, I think is a form of this timeline. They have opted out of the consensus timeline and they have gone to a very convincing to themselves, very individual timeline and reality. But unfortunately, it's not real positive. Positive has to do with what you develop personally. Otherwise, if you're just consuming media, consuming facts, consuming history, whatever, consuming the drama, consuming everything, then you become part of that consensus timeline. You don't have the option to opt out. I mean, you always have the option, but here's what you have to do. You have to develop a vision for yourself. You have to have clarity in it. So you're imagining details in there, not just saying a phrase and then expecting the red carpet to roll out. It needs to be very detailed. It needs to have colors. It needs to have action. It needs to include your behaviors. You need to see yourself doing that positive future. And then you develop confidence with it over a period of time as you just keep on imagining it. And then you invariably are going to come to these inflection points where the consensus timeline maybe feels compelling or convincing, and you now either choose to be part of that again. It's like they weave back and forth. But if yours is very strong, you don't have to worry about those conversion points. You just stay on your track. Now, going back to the psychology, negative or positive is not inferred by jumping off the consensus and doing your own timeline. All right. So I have some of these clients that are convincing themselves of paranoia, and they're always on edge. And what's interesting is they exhibit these same things. They refuse consensus reality in varying degrees. But the point is they have all the same attributes of their psychosis. In other words, they have a vision. They have clarity of that vision. They have confidence, overconfidence, right? But what's so ironic is you can see this and how they're creating an actual reality. In other words, like if the police is out to get me, which I see a lot, or they're programming my mind, or yada yada. It's like they're paranoid. They worry their family. Family sees them like it sees their, consensus reality timelines going this way, and they're going off this way. And the further that gets, the more paranoid they get. And so what does the family do? They want to figure out when to call the police. And you can see now the police shows up in this paranoid person who's just created their reality by being so fearful and increasingly fearful. So it's important, the emotion that you express in your vision, because it will create the reality as you increase in confidence and clarity and continue practicing the vision with imagination. All right. Does that all make sense? Okay. Nobody's here to comment to see if I'm making any sense, but I think that is what we're seeing in the DreamBot. It's the polarities. It's the, in a little word on polarity. Polarity does not imply the consensus timeline versus our own timeline, although that is a polarity. In my opinion, getting trapped inside of a polarity, and how do we do that? Well, we go today is on the DreamBot is night versus day. You're in a reality where no, it's day right now. No, it's night, or it's all day, or how about good, bad? It's all good. And forget that there is some bad. There's always good and bad. And I don't even like those terms. But there's both. So to get lost in the polarity is to get glommed onto one side. Like I don't want to say anything so that, well, like 9/11, for example. No, that didn't happen. This happened. Yeah. That's sort of getting lost in this polarity in the timeline. And remember, so the important thing is not to fight one of the polarities, and it's not to just ignore, put your head in the sand. It's to see the bipolar world everywhere you go, the polarities everywhere. Once you can see the whole continuum, you won't have to bite off on one half of it and then get lost in the consensus timeline. I think that's just a risk of getting caught in these polarities. See the whole picture. When you're getting bent out of shape, when you're getting very reactive, this is a sign that you're kind of getting sucked into a polarity, not a consensus timeline, a polarity. So to get out is to see the whole view, not ignore the reaction you got or the triggering. Don't ignore it. It's take a further view out, take a step back and see that there's an opposite side of that polarity. And then you'll be able to, once you do that, then you can shift your mind over to your future reality and develop the confidence and develop the clarity and rehearse the imagery. See the behaviors you're enacting, feel the emotions you're going to feel, right? And then ask, is this future reality helpful for me? Because you can get so far off the consensus that it feels crazy. It feels alone. And so you do want to make sure it's right for you. How do you make sure it's right for you? Well, is it serving your highest good? Is it serving the collective highest good? Are you contributing? Are you consuming entirely? Are you taking? Is it service to self? Service to others? Now we're into the law of one. But most importantly, does it match your values? Does it match your values? Hi, Hermes. What do you think so far? All right. One thing that we need to do is do the oracle reading. All right, here we go. So our last shot, we've been on for about 24 minutes, me babbling. And this is for everybody. This is for all the surfers who are watching the show either now or in the coming days. Not watching these cards and just sort of shuffling them. I have 3 piles. The first one is the planet. So Saturn, it's hard to orient. So that's the beautiful Saturn. Said no one except for me who likes Saturn. Okay, so now we want a zodiac sign, and I'm feeling for that one card, the one card that wants to come out. What humanity needs? What our surfers need in terms of advice? It's just still just like coming out in pairs. Like there's two there, so that doesn't count. And then I recycle them. There it is. Recycle them to the bottom. And that is, oh, that's the second house. That's not the sign. Are they all signs? Okay, so that's there. So now that was in the wrong pile. Oh, well. So we have the second house. We have Saturn in the second house. Now we need to know what the zodiac sign is. I'm using the same pile. We have Gemini, which is perfect because of the grand air trine. Saturn is facing the challenges. It's the timeline. The timeline. Work on your timeline. And it starts in your mind. Gemini. It starts, and it's very adaptable. It's adapting. And the second house, guess what that is? Your personal values. This is everything we just talked about. So you start with your personal values. Think about them, write them down, adjust your imagination to them, and start your own consensus timeline, Saturn. It'll be challenging at first, right? To kind of jump off the consensus, but this time is now. The time is now, and get ready for Venus going to be at the head of that grand air trine. And so prepare your finances, and there's more values there. Start now for your individual jumping off point. This is called the inflection point. This is called the consensus pivot point. That's my term. Consensus timeline pivot point. Time is now. Time to jump off and start your own. It's okay. We can do this. You can have your own reality, even while the consensus sort of has their own. All right, we're about done here. Peaceful healing energy to all. Back to you, Miss Honeybee. Like, share, subscribe. Yes. Thank you. Like, share, subscribe. I appreciate that. And thanks for commenting, Hermes. I hope everyone has a blessed day. Wonderful, productive time orchestrating this individual timeline for yourselves. I'm really a firm believer of this. Sort of dabbled in it over the years, and it really does work. So, for good or bad, it depends on how it's used. It's not that it doesn't work. It needs to be conscientiously used. And you do that by way of aligning it to your highest values. Identify those first. That's where we start. All right. That's all I have. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week. I will see you on Monday for another CIRF report. They're getting bombastically influential. You can see it. All right. Take care. Namaste.